Imagine being stranded in the endless void of space, your ship in ruins, resources running out, and trust among your crew crumbling. That's the terrifying reality of Mouthwashing, a psychological horror game developed by Wrong Organ. Today, we're diving deep into its story and themes to uncover what happened in Mouthwashing. Mouthwashing begins aboard the long-haul freighter Tulpar moments after a catastrophic crash. You play as different members of the surviving crew, piecing together what led to the disaster. Suspicion quickly falls on the captain Curly. Was he trying to save the crew, or was he hiding something darker? As you explore the ship, it becomes clear that the Tulpar wasn't just carrying cargo, it was carrying secrets. And those secrets come with consequences. The game's psychological horror shines as reality begins to blur. Each crew member struggles with guilt, fear, and hallucinations, forcing you to question what's real. This linear storytelling gives you multiple perspectives, revealing not only the events of the crash but also the hidden depths of each character. Now, let's talk about the themes. Mouthwashing thrives on isolation. The Tulpar's catastrophic corridors make you feel the weight of being stranded in space, and the reoccurring message, God is not watching, reminds you that there is no higher power to guide your choices. It's up to you to decide who to trust, what to believe, and ultimately, who survives. This theme of moral ambiguity runs deep. The game doesn't just make you question the captain's actions, it makes you question your own. Every decision impacts the fate of the crew and reveals just how fragile trust can be in desperate times. Then, there's the Tulpar's cargo. It's not just any freight. It's the key piece of the puzzle and a scathing commentary on corporate greed. The backstory hints that this cargo, and the mission itself, put profit above human life, showing how far greed can push people into morally gray territory. But at its core, Mouthwashing is about people, flawed, ordinary people. It's not just about survival, it's about the emotional struggles of working a dead-end job in space, the unspoken resentments, and the relationships that crack under pressure. This human element is what makes the horror feel so real. So, what happened in Mouthwashing? It's a story about survival, betrayal, and the haunting choices that we make when there's no one watching. The heart of Mouthwashing isn't just its eerie atmosphere or its gripping story. It's the crew. 5 individuals, each with their own flaws, secrets, and struggles, trying to survive the aftermath of the crash. Let's dive into the people who make the Tulpar's story so unforgettable. First, we have Captain Curly. On the surface, he's a seasoned and benevolent leader, the kind of person you want to follow in a crisis. But as the story unfolds, we see cracks in his armor. Was he protecting his crew, or did he know more about the mysterious cargo than he let on? His decisions force you to question what leadership really means when lives are on the line. Next is Jimmy, the co-pilot, and arguably one of the most complex characters. He's battling inner demons while trying to maintain control in a situation that's spiraling out of hand. Jimmy's adaptability makes him a vital part of the crew, but his emotional struggles rise the stakes in every decision you make. Anya is the ship's nurse, a beacon of resilience amidst chaos. She's been through her own share of challenges, and her dedication to the crew's health is unwavering. But as resources dwindle and tensions rise, even Anya has her breaking point. Her character adds a layer of emotional depth and humanity to the story. Then there's Wanzi, the gruff but experienced mechanic. He carries a deep sense of responsibility, not just for the ship but for his apprentice, Daisuke. While he may seem hardened on the outside, Swansea's protective nature makes him a compelling and surprisingly emotional character. Finally, there's Daisuke, the youngest member of the crew and Swansea's apprentice. His optimism and eagerness to help bring a rare lightness to the otherwise grim setting, but as the situation worsens, Daisuke's inexperience becomes both a challenge and a heartbreaking reminder of the stakes. Together, these characters create a dynamic mix of personalities, all shaped by the crash and the secrets of the Tulpar. Their interactions are the heart of the game, making every decision feel personal. Whether it's a moral dilemma or a critical choice about resources, the weight of your actions comes from the depth of these characters. So, who are the real heroes or villains of Mouthwashing? While Mouthwashing is a psychological horror game at its core, its gameplay mechanics are what pull you into its haunting, claustrophobic world. Let's take a closer look at how the game keeps you on edge every step of the way. Exploration is one of the game's most engaging elements. The Topar is a labyrinth of dark corridors, abandoned rooms, and eerie spaces that feel alive with tension. Every room you enter feels like a gamble. Will you find answers, resources, or just another piece of the ship's haunting atmosphere? Survival on the Topar means managing limited resources. You'll need to decide who gets food, how to ration medical supplies, and whether repairing a section of the ship is worth sacrificing precious materials. These decisions don't just impact gameplay, they shape the relationships between crew members. This is where Mouthwashing stands out. The game messes with your head, literally. Hallucinations blur the lines between what's real and what's imagined. One moment, you're fixing a vital system, and the next, you're questioning whether the shadows creeping around you are a part of the game or your imagination. One of the first things that grabs your attention in Mouthwashing is its unique visual style. It's not just a backdrop, it's a character in its own right, setting the tone for every tense and unsettling moment. The game uses a low poly art style, giving it a retro minimalist look. At first, this might seem like a limitation, but it's anything but. The simple models and textures create an uncanny, stripped-down world that feels empty, cold, and alien, perfect for a psychological horror game set in space. Instead of overwhelming you with hyper-realistic graphics, Mouthwashing focuses on the implied horror. Shadows flicker in the corners of your vision, and low-resolution details leave just enough to the imagination, making the fear more personal. The lighting in Mouthwashing is a masterclass in atmosphere. The Topar is bathed in deep shadows and dim. The contrast between light and dark creates tension, making you feel like something could emerge from the shadows at any moment. The color palette shifts dramatically in moments of high tension. Emergency lights bathe everything in red, glitch effects distort your view, and the world feels like it's breaking apart, just like the crew's mental state. The game's cinematic approach to storytelling is another standout feature. The fixed camera angles, tight framing, the sudden shifts in perspective create a constant feeling of unease. You're never quite sure what's waiting around the corner or behind you. Transitions between scenes are glitchy and abrupt, mirroring the crew's unraveling reality. It's a subtle and effective way of pulling you deeper into the story and its themes of mental breakdown. Players have been vocal about their experiences. It's not just the scares that stick with people, it's the emotional weight of the decisions and the haunting ambiguity of the story. The game's open-ended nature has sparked countless discussions online, from forums to video essays, with everyone trying to piece together the truth of the Topar. Mouthwashing has inspired an incredible community. Fan art, theories, and even memes have exploded since its release, proving how deeply it resonates with its audience. It's been one of those games that leaves people thinking long after the credits have rolled. So, what sets Mouthwashing apart in a crowded horror genre? It's the perfect storm of atmosphere, narrative, and gameplay mechanics. It doesn't just scare you, it makes you question your own perception of reality, much like the characters themselves. Mouthwashing isn't just a game you play, it's a game you feel. Its themes and legacy are what make it truly unforgettable. Let's dive into the deeper ideas behind the story and how they've left a lasting impact. The themes in Mouthwashing go beyond simple survival. At its heart, it's a story about the fragility of the human mind. From the beginning, the game explores isolation, guilt, and the effects of trauma. Each character struggles to hold onto their sanity as the Topar becomes a psychological battleground. When it comes to psychological horror, Mouthwashing stands tall among some of the greatest. Like Silent Hill, it uses the environment and sound design to reflect the character's inner turmoil. Like Soma, it forces you to confront existential questions, but it adds its own twist with a suffocating, space-bound setting. Its legacy is already taking shape in the gaming community. Players are still unraveling its mysteries, debating its themes, and finding new layers of meaning with each playthrough. This isn't just a game, it's a conversation starter. What's most haunting about Mouthwashing is how it affects real human experiences. Isolation, guilt, the breakdown of trust. These are struggles we all face in some form. The game uses its sci-fi setting to amplify these feelings, making them impossible to ignore. Mouthwashing delivers a dark, twisted tale that starts with one catastrophic event, the crash of the Tulpar. As the story unfolds, we realize this wasn't just an accident. It was the result of one man's selfishness, jealousy, and ultimate descent into madness. At first, the crash is pinned on Captain Curly, but the truth, it was Jimmy, the co-pilot, who sabotaged the ship, and for a few very dark reasons. When the crew learned they'd been laid off, Curly, trying to be a good leader, chose honesty. But that decision exposed the grim reality. While the rest of the crew faced unemployment, Curly's captaincy meant he would still have a job and a paycheck. Jimmy, envious of Curly's position and increasingly unhinged, saw no future for himself. Jimmy's descent didn't stop there. He had also assaulted Anya, the ship's medical officer, when he had discovered she was pregnant. He realized the consequences. Anya trusted only Curly and confided in him, pleading for Jimmy's removal of the ship. This led to a confrontation where Jimmy, cornered and knowing he'd face justice back on Earth, made a desperate, destructive choice. He crashed the Tulpar to erase his problems. Following the crash, Jimmy's manipulation allowed him to assume command of the ship. Anya, already grappling with trauma, became increasingly isolated, confiding only in Swansea, the ship's mechanic. In a haunting moment, she locked herself in the medical bay, taking her own life next to Curly, who was gravely injured, but still alive. Swansea, devastated by the crash and Anya's death, eventually discovered that Jimmy was responsible for everything. When he confronted Jimmy, he paid for it with his life, tied up and shot in cold blood. Daisuke, the youngest and most hopeful crew member, wasn't spared either. Jimmy sent him through the dangerous vents to fix the ship, and the boy sustained fatal injuries. Later on, Swansea mercy killed him, but his death marked the shattering of any remaining innocence aboard the Tulpar. Jimmy's spiral into madness is both horrifying and tragic. He devolves into cannibalism, hallucinating and constructing delusions to justify his actions. In his final act, he places Curly, his rival and the person he destroyed, into a cryogenic pod. Is this a moment of redemption, or just another selfish act to escape his guilt? That's for the player to decide. In the end, Jimmy shoots himself, meaning that Curly would be to awaken 20 years later, disabled, alone, and burdened with the knowledge of all that transpired. Curly is left to suffer, a chilling reminder of the horrors humanity can inflict on itself. I have to say, Mouthwashing has some of the deepest, most well-written lore I've encountered in a psychological horror game. It's not just about jump scares or shock value, it's the way the story peels back layers of each character's struggles, flaws, and trauma that really stuck with me. As I was playing, I couldn't help but feel bad for almost every character in their own way. Curly, the captain, was just trying to be a good leader. He wanted to be honest with his crew about the layoffs, and I think that came from a place of genuine care. But that honestly is what ultimately set everything into motion, as he ends up bearing the brunt of everyone else's actions. By the end, knowing he's been left in cryostasis for 20 years with nothing but his thoughts, that's a fate worse than death, and I really felt bad for him. Anya's story hit hard too. She was dealing with so much, being assaulted, finding out she was pregnant, and having no real way to escape the situation on the ship. Her isolation, her trauma, and ultimately her tragic end felt so real and so unfair. It's heartbreaking to think about what she went through, especially since she seemed like the glue holding the crew together in the beginning. Even Swansea and Daisuke have their moments. Swansea's relapse into alcoholism after years of sobriety really spoke to how hopeless the situation had become for everyone, and Daisuke, the youngest and most optimistic of the group, was just trying to prove himself. Watching his innocence get stripped away and seeing how much he trusted the wrong people was gut-wrenching. But Jimmy? I don't feel any sympathy for him. He's the root of everything that went wrong. His jealousy, his selfishness, and his complete disregard for everyone else's well-being are what destroyed the crew. And then, at the very end, when he places Curly in cryostasis instead of himself, some people might see that as a redemptive moment, but for me, it was just another act of cowardice. Jimmy knew he couldn't face what he'd done. He didn't have the guts to own up to it, so he left Curly alive to carry the weight of everything. Something Curly didn't deserve. To me, that wasn't redemption. That was Jimmy running away, just like how he always did. Mouthwashing left me thinking long after the credits rolled. It's a story about more than just survival. It's about morality, responsibility, and how far people will go when pushed to their limits. And as much as I hated Jimmy, he's a testament to how well this game portrays deeply flawed characters. It's haunting, it's tragic, and it's absolutely brilliant. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive into Mouthwashing. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more content like this. I love to hear your thoughts on the game's story and characters. Do you think Jimmy's final act was redemption or just cowardice? Let me know in the comments below and let's chat. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and keep hopping along with me. Bye!